Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Ethan Trang. Ethan Trang is a friend of mine, and his story is certainly not normal to say the least. He is currently a freshman at University of Sydney, and he's building Dory AI with around 300 users and 20K in funding, and previously interned as an artificial intelligence engineer for one of the three biggest tech companies in Vietnam. And he himself worked with one of the Nvidia CPUs worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So yeah, I'm really excited for this podcast.
Man, you're too generous, Elim. And we do keep in touch, and it's just great to to also connect with someone who's also doing podcasting. But yeah, I'm super stoked, super excited for our conversation today, man.
The first thing I want to get into is you're in the education and AI space with your Dory AI. How has it changed in the recent few months with AI is just exponentially growing every single day?
Yeah, definitely, man. So I can speak to my internship experience last year and sort of my experience building Dory AI now. So I joined like the artificial intelligence team last year in Vietnam, around July, and like the things we were working on would probably be like very easy to replicate right now. We were working on an enterprise search chatbot, and it was a very simple RAG where we would like upload PDFs, Word documents, etc., and then you would just chat to it. Um, and it will use the context from the files that you put in to answer the question. So back then, like all the LangChain docs were like so minimal, and it was just like we were so early in AI. Back then, it was like three teams in AI in Vietnam in total, so it was very cutting edge at the time. And moving on to like now, where we started building Dory in around February, um, like the LangChain documents is like exploded, and you've seen like the introduction of so many other competitors coming up, like Claude, Gemini, Mistral, like all becoming really relevant. And what I've seen is like the process of actually getting started and building a RAG is much easier now, and it's actually the sort of like the technical boundaries that we can push with like all the documentation, all the work that's being done on developer experience and stuff has really like sort of made it easy for myself to easily catch on and quickly build out the technology for Dory.
Has there been any competitors? Because I mean, with AI being easier, wouldn't that make competitors easy to come in?
Yeah, man, like that's an interesting discussion, and we our product Dory sort of like models a few of our competitors in the United States, so like Wistolia, Jotbot, etc. So we actually had to tackle it in a different angle. We understood how their technology worked, but in order to get a piece of the market share, you had to differentiate your product. So we understood that. So like, as students ourselves, and on our team we have someone who used to be a teacher as well. It was just pivoting to that sort of niche where we were targeting both students and teachers. And our edge was maybe not like having the best engineering in terms of like fine-tuning AI and stuff, but we could make it as user-centric as possible. So we support many different types of inputs, from files to websites to videos, and that's just sort of makes it easy for some of our users to onboard and start using Dory. And on the other hand, on the output side, we also try to make it as diverse as possible. So we have Quizlet, Kahoot, Anki, and we're definitely working more on like creating as many formats of output as possible. So that's been a very unique edge for us. And whereas like many apps would focus on like specifically PDF to like Anki, that's actually an app as well. Or like specifically YouTube videos to something like that. We want it to be more of like an all-in-one and make it as seamless as possible, and as centralized as possible, so people don't need to like use different apps for different things.
Interesting. And I mean, just in this matter of 3 months, you guys built this out, or before it was you had Clip Tutor. How'd you go about building these things fast? Because you're young, we're
Yeah,
both young,
man.
we're not that experienced. How do you go about building it?
Yeah, 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 definitely, man. If it's about building, I have a lot to learn from you. Like I think you mentioned you didn't have a lot of experience in being able to build something like Pen Parrot at the time. you know, the reason why I wanted to join forces with Pete, and initially, like, I had no intentions of like being part of a startup. I thought I wasn't ready for that, and like, Pete sent me a LinkedIn request. I just looked at his profile, and he's like my age, and he's already built like three of these things, and I just realized that it's possible at our age, and it's possible if you just like put your head down and like learn as fast as you can. And what I learned is like it's not about making like pretty or beautiful code. It's making code that's one, like at least make it work, And it's just like I think I think a lot of us get too obsessed with building building in a like a very optimal or like a very controlled environment. Whereas like if you're building a product, you have to know more like every element of it, how the front end works, how the back end works, how the cloud works, how you're distributing your services, how payments work. So that's been like such a great experience. And you know, looking back and like we were pushing week 9 right now, so we started building Door for 9 weeks. We launched after 4 weeks of building our MVP, and we've just been iterating since then. I think the best way is just to learn how to like build something that's functional and easy to test and then iterate on it later. You can go on YouTube and you can look at like a 4 or 5 hour tutorial, which is like which might sound long, but it's not that long compared to like completing an entire degree or something. And just going through all of that and just finishing it and then iterate later, like that's the step that just people need to take. Just building something from end to end and work on it like afterwards. And I just want to ping it back to you, man. Like, how did you? So, what was your learning process for like picking up code quickly, building quickly, and actually launching something that's sellable, actually monetizable?
I don't think I'm the best at saying this, but at least to the extent where we made 2000. Um, how I managed to learn, I learned coding in like last year. I think February. I was just taking some courses, but then I joined the community. And then there was this one Silicon Valley entrepreneur guy who sold his company, and then this one AI professor. I don't know why they asked me, but they told me, "Hey man, you wanna join our hackathon team?" And I'm like, "Why?" It was because the project I was building at that time was in line with what they wanted. So I worked on them, and then I figured out a lot about how these people go about learning, and I shared this to a lot of people, which I think is contrary to what a lot of people believe, that people just steal your idea. Maybe they do, but it wasn't. I was just a 16-year-old, so there wasn't much to lose. So yeah, I met this one guy with a master's in AI, and he helped me out more personally with the code, and I built a lot of it myself, and it failed a lot. I fucking hated it, and then it somehow ended up working at the end. It was a basic AI Chrome extension where if you are on LinkedIn, Discord, or whatever, just search wherever you can chat something, you can just write /AI, write what you want, it'll just send you the response, and you can make custom prompts. So it wasn't that complicated, so I think that helped. Having a very simple code. I changed it to React, but originally it was just a JavaScript file with a JSON file attached. Like, it was super basic. How we got money was through Gumroad, um, and the website was shit. Like, it didn't, but people paid, and it seemed like it actually had the pain point to help. Issue was it didn't seem like there was a competitive advantage we had over Grammarly, who basically just built a similar functionality.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, man. Like big companies who adapt AI and startups that are born specifically to do AI. That's sort of like an interesting thing. So if we're looking at, for example, like Google didn't initially start out as building AI, right? But they have like an entire suite of products that billions of people use. So when they deploy something, everyone's gonna use it, and that's sort of like the competitive advantage that they have. So like the interesting about like building your own product, like making it AI focused, is you really need to emphasize a lot on the quality, and it's just like the interesting like you have like a marketing funnel to get users in, right? But retention is solely based on how good the product is. So that's why we put like a really large emphasis on like Adore to just like optimize, um, experiment a lot with the product, and like the thing that I like to say is like make it to something that I would use personally. Like if it's not a product that you use, then it's probably pretty not like it's probably not good enough to like for other people to use, and especially for other people to want to pay and use it. Sometimes you have outliers, but in general, like I wanted to build something that I would be using, that when I was doing like my studying and stuff, I would think about Dory, and that's sort of the thing that we want to instill in our users as well, right? So in terms of like the early stages, I think it's so important to just focus on product quality and actually test, like validate by talking to users and stuff to make sure that this is actually the thing that they want and would be willing to pay for.
I mean, you also host a podcast. Now, I how has it been so far? How's been podcasting as a 20-year-old
Oh, a
or a
podcast?
19-year-old? How old are you?
I'm not 19 yet, man. I mean, I turned 19 in a month, so almost there, almost there. Man, podcast has been good, man. Like just calling Perry, shout out to Perry this morning. Shout out to you for connecting me with him. You know, like despite the fact that Dory's been busy, um, you know, like I might like procrastinate on like trying to get guests and scheduling stuff and removing stuff so like I have time to do the podcast, record the podcast, edit the podcast. Like every time I just do the call and finish the call, like it's the best energy spike ever. And I feel like you relate to this as well. Like you leave a conversation with more energy than you came in with, and that's how you know it's an amazing conversation. And like the best way to like savor that a bit more is just to go and edit it immediately and like just listen back. So that's been like something that after like the recording this morning and actually doing two in one day actually. I didn't do one for like a few weeks, and just doing it again was just like, yeah, like this is what I want. And I have like one booked every week for the next like 4 weeks or so. But like, yeah, like I think with podcasting, it's just like you need to do it consistently. Then you sort of like reap the rewards of it, and you stay consistent. And I feel like you've been doing a great job with that, like just in terms of volume. And yeah, it's a process, man. Like, I mean, it's like the stuff that you can learn and like the sort of power and leverage that the podcast gives you to reach out to other people. um okay, that's one thing. One thing is to just get people to like talk to you just because you have this podcast, right? But like the podcast itself, like a podcast interview, is not a very normal conversation. It's a very like um the power dynamic is like more leveraged on you, where you get to ask the questions and you get to direct the conversation, right? At the same time, you have to think about like how to say. I think the best way to like sort of like tell this is just by mentioning like one of my podcast heroes, like Tim Ferriss. He got me into podcasting in the first place. Um, it's just like he has so many cool techniques in order to get the best like responses and quotes from his guests, and it all boils down to like really good question answering, right? And like one of his like really cool techniques is that he'll have a good question, like let's not focus on the question here, but the delivery where he'll ask the question first, and then he will sort of answer the question in his own terms and in his own life. And during that time, like during like that 10-20 second like time frame where he's talking, the guest is already thinking about what they say. And when they open their mouth and they start speaking, they just drop a banger
That's
sort
like
of
the
like
difference
response.
between like world class interviewers and just normal. Because I was interviewing someone, he interviewed like 1,000 people himself, and he was saying like because we are a part of this podcasting part, we kind of can appreciate the art and beauty of these masters of their craft.
Man, how do you feel about listening to your earlier episodes?
I actually I didn't release some of them because they were so like crappy, and I still don't feel amazed at it. But I'm happy that I improved a lot more. You like editing? I don't like it because I'm kind of reminded of myself, but I find it very helpful.
Yes, yes. Like what I like to do is like, okay, I actually don't like editing too much, but I've sort of like stripped down the process to not make it too complicated. Like I remember my first episode that I edited with it was with my brother. Like I was editing out every like empty space and like making the volume to zero, so like there was like no background noise basically. So I was doing that for basically like for a 45-minute video, and it was using something like Audacity, which doesn't allow you to speed up. I should probably switch to like the software that I'm using, but more generally, like it's to stay consistent with podcasting. I just like made the process as fun as I could, and you can have like the weird like sounds here and there, but if you can like consistently push out content, you're not worried about like editing before you onboard a new guest. Like just making the process more simple and more fun makes podcasting a lot more fun and a lot more consistent. It allows you to focus more on the quality.
Just one thing I'm curious is because you're Bell and Doria and you're having this podcast and you're a freshman. How do you manage your time schedule? What's been your things you've been trying to implement?
No, man. I mean, like it's. I think I don't think I'm like extremely obsessed with like planning and scheduling. Like scheduling, like I'll just leave it in my calendar and I know I'll get to it. But I think just having a lot of like systems in place where so like for example for school, right? I just have like this Notion page for my school, and like every time I go to class, I just open a new tab. I type in like four letters like STUD, which is automatically the bookmark for my student Notion page. Click on notes and start taking notes, right? And I have like a folder bookmark system on my page, on like my Chrome, where like it's easy to just click and just go to the subject, right? So those like simple things, like you'll like over time, there's so much time you'll save just by creating a shortcut, and that's made it very easy for me to like. It reduces the friction for you to get started on like and like switching between tasks. So that's something that I do personally, but to be honest, I haven't been like really good with like the balance between like school and like working on Dory, working with the podcast. Like the podcast took a bit of a hit in like the last 4 weeks. It's just like I think there's always trade-offs, and I think it's okay to just like prioritize one thing for maybe like a period of like 1 to 4 weeks and see where you're at, see your progress with like, the things that you're focusing on and reflect on that and then divert your resources to the next phase. And like you just keep really evaluating that. I mean like I'm not someone who's consistently working on all three in the same day perchance, but over the span of like, 3 6 months, I'm pretty much dividing like equal attention to all those three. And or in like sort of like in the importance of like how much I value them. I value school just because like, it's it's sort of like a foundation for me. And also like you learn like I'm doing software engineering and like I'm learning more like high level design stuff that makes more sense because I'm actually doing software engineering myself, right? Like, I don't need to stress how much you'll learn by building a start or building a product. And the podcast itself is just something like that I've made so fun that I'll naturally come back to it, and I'll always want to keep doing that as well. So yeah, if that answers your question, man. But I want to ping it back to you. I'm pinging it back to you because like I want to work on focus and focusing on one thing. And you initially built like products and AI and stuff, but now you're focused fully on the podcast. Like, do you feel like you experience a lot of like missing out on all the other things you could be doing by just doing one single thing?
That's crazy. I was just looking at Forbes, and there was this idea around AI idea I was thinking of, and he built it a year ago, and he's worth $6 billion or something, and he's from Japan, and I was just like, oh my god, it's like this missed opportunity, but it's not really. And I don't know, just I've tried. I mean, I'm young, so it makes sense, but I've tried fitness AI assistant. I've tried all kinds of AI assistants, and just like I tried the web development agency, I tried the marketing agency, I tried building AI. Like I tried so many things, and it's like I keep diverting my attention. But whenever I focus on something for an extended amount of time, which happened to the pen parrot thing I was talking about, because I focused on it for like 5 months, then that actually generated money. So I was like, okay, let me just fucking stick to something for once. And one of my mentors, I listened to him a lot, and I didn't listen to him. I think I'm kind of paying the price. He I think he was a millionaire when he was 19, and he told me like he rented out private jets, and is like never ever do that. Like he doesn't he comes across as one of the most humble people. Like he just eats salads, and I'm just next to him, and he just gave me all these advice. And the few bits of advice he told me was stick to something for 2 years, and I guarantee you'll be at least making 10K per month profit, or however much money you want, because you just need that focus. And if you keep diverting away, it just is it won't get to anything, because nothing really big happens in less than 2 years. So yeah, I'm just taking his advice.
Yeah. Are you a Hormozi fan? Like Alex Hormozi?
Yeah, somewhat. I've been trying to stop listening to anything, because I just realized I was talking to my friend, and I think this may be an issue with a lot of young entrepreneurs our age, is we listen to the same people. Everyone, like all my friends, when I look at their YouTube feed, it's exactly the same as mine, and that's not good. It means we're getting the same exact information. So I'm a bit worried about that.
It's interesting though. I mean, like, I I've been getting into Hormozi, and like I think I'll talk a bit about one thing. Like initially when I joined Clip Tutor, now it's called Dory. One of the things that I valued in like Pete as a co-founder was that he had a very good like information pipeline that he was getting into. So like the thing is like he would immediately know like, oh, what our competitors are doing, like what's happening with AI right now. And like that is very valuable because I think like startups become successful more or less so for like two reasons. First, they're like the first in the market. They basically did something that might not be extremely technically challenging, but solved a problem that no one has solved before. And like that's pretty easy to understand, right? You're just first in the market trend. But the second is like being so technical, or like having a skill that is so rare that you have zero competitors in the market, and that's how you succeed. So this like realization came to me, and he's going to come on the podcast on Tuesday. Michael. So his name is Michael, um, and he worked on some database algorithm, and he started like his start was called Wire Tiger. He developed this database algorithm. He'd been a PhD student. He'd been doing database stuff for like 10 years or so, and he basically made this algorithm that was so efficient that MongoDB acquired him, and is the algorithm that's still used in Postgres. So like, I can't even like it's the stuff that most of us take for granted, really. And his startup was successful, more or less so, because his skill was so rare that he devoted so much time, effort, and energy into like his niche that he basically had zero competitors. So in terms of like groundbreaking products, yes, like research, more or less so, will give you like a guaranteed like us like if you're actually groundbreaking, then yeah, you'll get the returns. But in the position of us where we're not like that technical in the grand scheme of all developers, it's about getting the right information and getting it early and getting started early, going to market early. So that's sort of the thing where I value like a lot of like information. But the reason why I brought Hormozi just now is just like I was getting into him, and like he has a lot of interesting like points on like mindset and stuff. And the thing that we were talking about just now is like, how do I balance stuff? How do you focus on one thing? I actually want to focus more on one thing, but it kind of boils down to like the fact that when we get started on something, we have this uninformed optimism. Like, this is so cool, this is so exciting, and you get into it more, and then it gets too complex, and then you try the next thing. Like, I don't want to be stuck in that. I don't want to be stuck on like, oh, this is getting too hard. I'm going to distract myself with some other cool thing that I think will be easy to follow through, right? Every idea starts with something that's really like sexy, cool, that you think you can do everything all the way to the end, right? But I think, with building Dory, and I was sort of like, the team kept me accountable as well. Like, the whole startup culture keeps you accountable. Like, building it from like nothing to like something that actually works and something that actually people buy, like actually pay money for. Like, that's where I want to stick to, and actually like continuing to push through and not take on too much is sort of like where I want to see myself. And you know, I think depth, like you can have the same amount of like time and energy, right? If you focus it on depth, you'll get like a lot more returns if you just focused all that, if you spread all that time energy out, like in breadth, if that makes sense. So it's just, yeah, it's just sort of like things that are unlocked when you just go into something much deeper and for a longer period of time, that you have to actually go through it in order to get the return.
And then ever more, it's like that is difficult. Like most of us, it's hard for us to focus on something because that boredom kicks in and that pain kicks in once you go to a really deep level. And Hormozi was saying, that pain, that level where you feel all that pain, every other person who's trying to master that skill and trying to be good in that niche will face. And if you can survive it, but it's so painful that you think most people will quit, as long as you survive, it means you're ahead of 99% of people. And the more of these things you feel, the more likely that other people will quit. And just in the podcasting industry, Chris Williamson, the Modern Wisdom, one of the guys I listen to, he was saying, as a podcaster, there's talent and there's all these things, but you know, consistency is the most important because there are people who have talent and that I don't know, they enjoy, they have passion, whatever it may be. But then, if you put like 500 of them, what puts some of them apart? That's consistency. That's the pain they have to go through, and it's such a rare skill to have, and that's something I'm trying to build.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, like, we're all trying to build that, and
Yeah.
even the people who are definitely consistent, continuing to remind themselves that they need to be more consistent. I wanted to ask you a bit more about podcasts, man. Like, what is your process for like reaching out to people, and especially where you're young, like I'm young too, but like reaching out to people who are basically top caliber. Like, what is, and we talked about a bit about this like off the camera, but like, do you have sort of like a process that you go through in order to get like like speakers like this on your podcast?
I've been getting more anxious because some of the people I have, or I'm reaching, some of the people I've already recorded, I'm kind of anxious to edit them out because I want to wait until until I feel like I'm prepared. Because once I have them, then I can get on more higher caliber people. But I think it's like kind of you get used to it. First time you reach out to someone, it's like that's the baseline. But as you reach out to more higher caliber people, the baseline just increases, and everything below that kind of gets normalized. But how I reached out to them, I just found that, I just found that this is what people have been mentioning is my unique talent. Is just I'm good at, if I physically meet someone, I'm good at networking. So I leveraged that a lot. Most of my guests I physically met at an event, and then I just got their contacts, and I usually had a coffee chat afterwards, and I just asked them questions, and I just said, hey, can I do this in a podcast, basically? Or I've been using Twitter and LinkedIn. LinkedIn and Twitter is really powerful. I think Twitter is more powerful these days. And I heard this quote about saying, people on LinkedIn are people who work for millionaires. People on Instagram are people trying to act like millionaires. And then Twitter are millionaires trying to act like normal people. And TikTok are for people who need to finish their assignments. But so I think that's the way. I just use Twitter a lot. People respond back nicer. I think it's underutilized. Um, I got retweeted by Founders Podcast and what was it? Some other podcast. And the reason why is
Congrats, man.
I was so happy. Cliff Weitzman liked it because it was based on their software. Like like
Wow.
I like like it seems like if you just like because not a lot of people create stuff, they just comment. If you just like write stuff, they will comment. And this is specifically about their feature, so maybe that helps. I don't know. I'm trying to grow. I'm only at 190 followers, bro.
Man, I mean, I need to get on. I need to get on Twitter as well, man. Like Pete, like our co-founder, is good at using Twitter as well. Like I like. So I've been posting more on LinkedIn recently, and like I've been seeing more sort of like returns on that. Being more active on LinkedIn and stuff. So that's how like you just send a connection and they'll look at your experience. Oh, you're in the AI space as well. You just send a message and more often than not, people will be happy to connect. And it's just like sending that initial message to like, hey, I think the stuff you're building is so cool. Would love to learn more. I'm also building an edtech. Blah 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 blah. Can we have a chat? And then like most people like will either like 80% of the time for me, they'll like reply and say like, yeah, cool, we'll talk. The other thing is like posting and being active on that end as well. So like we were just posting stuff for Dory. We made like this like video where like we're applying to YC and we're using like our app to help us. And like we were using Tela, which is like the video recording for the demo. And like the CEO Tela like commented on the video, and we're meeting with the CEO Tela on Tuesday. It's crazy.
Really,
Yeah,
physically.
and it's like, yeah, no. I mean, like he's in the Netherlands, but we're just calling with him. But like, it's just crazy that if you just put yourself out there, like, and you put out like stuff that you put effort into and you think is valuable, like people will respond to that. People will think that's cool.
Over. I love to go over like because you did something quite exceptional. You worked for these big companies and you helped. You were like a sales B2B sales when you're like 16 or something. Artificial intern. I still understand and yeah. How did you go about getting those gigs? As a 15 or 16-year old.
All right, I'll tell you the story, man. It's actually a story that most people ask me about, so I feel like I've told it a lot of times. Um, I started coding at the end of grade 10, and the only reason I started coding was because we hosted like this charity volleyball tournament, and like this coding school wanted to sponsor us, and they gave us like a 1 week free trial to like go to their coding school and learn, right? Like I only did it because my friend wanted to do it, and like he just wanted someone to do it with him. So like, okay, fine, I'll do this coding thing with you. Turns out I love coding. I got hooked in the first week, paid for the whole course, did it for like 2 more months, and they had this like part 2 course, which was like so expensive. So I didn't want to do it. So I just said no, and like I started grade 11. But I always wanted to like get into coding, and I feel like the environment was very important for me to start coding. Like, I'm not the person who's gonna be like on lead code all the time, solving problems every night. Like I'm not that type of person. So my 11 like grade 11 self thought that, okay, if I can just like get a job at like this school. So I emailed like the academic director, um who and I asked her like, can I just be like a blogger for algorithmics, which is the school, like just to show like my value. I had like a whole reference letter from like my principal and stuff. It's kind of cringy looking back, but like she just recognized what I was doing and she just like gave me a job as like a teacher assistant. So I was working alongside a teacher teaching Python. I did that for like from March to like July, and the cool thing about that is like I love my job. I love like going in, like teaching, supporting the teacher, writing lesson plans and stuff, and like just helping out with all the events of the school. Turns out like the academic director, her husband was moving to VNG Corporation, their blockchain team, to work as head of business, and he just wanted a research intern. So that's actually sort of the only reason why I got into like B2B and like sales and development, business development, stuff like that. Just because like at the like on the last day of my internship of that of the of like the teacher assistant gig type of thing, he just like sent me a message like, "How good are you at research?" And like I just said like I did some of it in school and stuff, so he was like, "Okay, yeah, you'll be an intern for me." It's like it was crazy because like it was like a research lab doing like blockchain security for like Binance and like stuff like that. Axie Infinity. Like if you're in blockchain, you'll like some crazy stories came out of Binance when I was there, man. But yeah, it was just like so random and like so eye opening to me. That if you like the main lesson I try to tell myself is just like if I just focus on doing a good job of what I've committed to do like at that time, then like just opportunities will come out. So that was sort of like the lesson I got from there. And you know, went through did part time at VeriChange, which is the blockchain firm that I worked at. Did sales and business development for them, like just building out email marketing campaigns and uh, actually built like a web scraper on CoinMarketCap in order to like get the top leads, the hot leads, and like I use like LinkedIn Sales Nav to like contact them and shit. But that was sort of like it's that's why I recommend like for most young people to get started in like marketing and sales, just because it's a very low barrier to entry. You don't need too many. You just need to know English basically, and you'll figure out how to use the tools yourself, like Bravo, Apollo, like just basic like research tools. But yeah, man, like if that like answers like the first initial question of like how I got in, I would say dumb luck, like stupid dumb luck, getting getting those roles. But like you get what you get, and like that internship led to the next internship, which led to the next internship. So I mean, like it's just very serendipitous, like how that happened. But yeah, you just take everything at face value, man, and you just take whatever's given to you.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like most people like they wonder if it's all luck, but it's also you kind of position yourself in front of the luck through hard work, and you were doing stuff before, and you had that relationship. So it's I mean, and that seems to be the case for everyone I interviewed. You know, everyone I interviewed, they say the same thing, where they worked hard and they positioned themselves in front of the luck.
Yeah, luck is preparation meets opportunity. So it's like I live by that as well, man. It's just like if you continue to try and develop yourself and like just constantly trying to develop yourself, some opportunity will fit into that. And it's just honestly it's just a matter of time. I mean I could bring it back to you again, man. Like I don't know. Did you always see yourself as like being in tech and doing the AI stuff that you do now? And like I don't know, man. It's just like my jump into AI was also like pretty dumb luck as well, but I haven't regretted that. So just wondering, like, was it initial interest in yourself and then you pushed for the change? And like, like sort of like what lessons did you get from like how you got started doing the stuff that you do?
Yeah, I was at I think I was 13 or 10 or whatever. I was like building 3D printers, and it was really fun. And I always envisioned myself as like Elon Musk 2.0. I don't envision myself because I he's not me and I'm not him. I have my own path, but yeah. So I was always interested, but then I got an MMA, and then I kind of stopped. But then I met a friend, and he casually said he raised $150,000 when he was 16 or something, which I still don't understand. But using that as reference, I tried doing business and stuff and did marketing, and I find that I wasn't really skilled in it, or I now I find that I am okay in it. Like I can help companies do it. It's just the issue was I didn't spend enough time. I only spent 6 months, so that's probably why. But I got into tech because I wanted to build a skill set, and everyone said I was like mathematically pretty good. I've always been the best usually, and so I was like, okay, so let me get into that. And it was very hard. Like it's not like math. It was super super hard, and I still don't really know how to make AI. I just use their APIs and I like connect
Yeah,
stuff, and I
yeah,
maybe I use like a visual interface to kind of build like a little bit more specified LLM based on my needs, but like I'm not skilled. I just built stuff. I just built the front end. I enjoy the front end a lot more. I don't like the back end. It's a bit too hard for me. Um, and I just find that to be me. And I did that, and I found that it's fun. But this thing where I discuss and I try to build a media company. It seems more fun.
What's the AI community that you're doing?
The AI for Founders is a physical meetup. I tried to host it every week, but then something's happened. But now it's every month, and it's just a bunch of experts and business owners and people who just want to figure what AI is and discuss about how they're using it for their own business. Just discuss about what AI is and how they can prepare for the shift, you know. And yeah, I found some pretty interesting people. One guy, he has a Stanford AI master's degree. I don't know why he came, but he came and he gave a lot of insightful insights. So
I mean, like, I'm also in a community here in Sydney, and like, I just left. I just left to come home and do this podcast with you. But like, there's so much value in having a community, man. Like, you just get exposed to so many more ideas. Like, the general structure that they do it, like, at Bill Club, which is where I'm at. They just give like at the start of the co-working session, you'll just all one by one introduce what you're working on, what's your plan for the day. Halfway through, you get a snack break, networking break, and then like the last hour is just demos. And like you just see what people are working on, and like you just ask questions, you learn about what tools people are using, what models people are using, and then like I'm just there taking notes all I can to see like how we can enhance story. So it's just like I'm not sure if you adopt a similar structure. It's just like being exposed to more people and like of different, not only like different ages and stuff and different places, but also like different expertise. We had like people in product management at the club. So, but in the end, it was all focused around AI and like different perspectives. And there's so much value in being in a community like that, man. And like you being able to foster a community like that is really cool.
yeah, I try my best. Community is something I'm trying to help. There's this big, I can't say, but I'm trying to help them, and hopefully things work out so it can be more official. But helping them build their own internal community, because I was thinking AI is going to change everything, or assuming that it'll change a lot of things, assuming it'll like achieve like AGI or a very sufficient amount. It's just very powerful. Then what will last? And I'm thinking not a lot of things will last. Some of the few things that will 100% last is community and people who manage AI, which is the two things I'm trying to focus in. Because I know I'm gonna pretty lot. Hopefully, I'll live a long life. So I'm trying to think what skill sets I can best learn. And everyone I interviewed, they say the same thing, which is I wish I connected to more people when I was younger. So just trying to maximize that.
That's interesting, man. Like I think a lot about like, I guess being relatively young. I mean, like, yeah, sorry, I shouldn't say relatively. I'm like, we're basically young, and like,
We are very young,
like,
bro.
yeah, it's yeah, yeah. But I was just saying, like, I was just thinking, like, AI came about last year, and it's going to change my entire life, right? And I'm just like scrambling to think, like, oh, what should I be working on? What skills should I do? And then, like you said, there's things that won't last. There's sort of like hot, trendy things in AI that personally I don't see a long roadmap for. Like, if we're thinking like 20, 30 years down the line, right? So it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if like the hype cycle right now is more focused on get rich quick schemes with AI. Like not that quick, but like things that only work right now in this certain period. And I don't want to be like caught on that. Like what if my entire skill set is only based on something that's so ephemeral, like so temporary that 30 years, 30 like 20, 30 years, it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, if I make enough out of it, maybe like that's not a concern. But like, it's just like, yeah, I'm very like wanting to understand what's going to last. And I don't know if you feel this too, but I don't see myself being very deep into like research and the technical. Like, I want to learn more about like business. Like how can I extract the value from AI and like market it, sell it, earn from that. So yeah, just wondering like what have you learned that's like pretty interesting throughout like time building your community? Some sort of like interesting points on AI that you think most people don't know about.
Yeah, one of the things I heard is he was a lecturer, AI lecturer at Samsung, and he was saying he already thinks super intelligence already exists in the world. Just companies are kind of gatekeeping it. And I forgot who else I was discussing with, but he was telling me it was a recent guy I interviewed, and he was saying, you know, it's kind of like a lot of these finance companies, a lot of these banks, if they do have these resources, right? Why would they ever share it? There's no incentive for them to share it. It's this unique advantage they have. So I was like, oh shoot. So maybe they do have it. And insights on like what will last, I'm not really sure. But I've just haven't have I tried to talk to random business owners, and I talked to this one guy. he owned like this massive building, and like I didn't go up to him. I just saw like this guy just was in the place, and it was like massive. And I just asked him what he does, and he's the owner, and he has nothing technical, none of the fad stuff. He just builds power plants across Seoul, and like he has, and I'm like maybe so the world is not just like AI and tech. It's like there's other stuff in between. And I'm just trying to think like what because these things will change, but maybe I'm thinking of this too like almost like a fanaticism to like oh like yeah it's gonna change everything and maybe it isn't. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm smart enough to think like I haven't spent enough time to understand it, but even people who understand it at a deep level, they all have different arguments, so I'm kind of like okay, so these people who spend all their time thinking about this disagree, then there seems to be a general consensus, but that consensus is not absolute, you know. So yeah, but I mean, I'm taking my bet on the fact that community will last. Alex Hormozi took a bet on community, so I don't know what will last, but some form of community is what I'm kind of betting my life on. And I know that this personal skills and this ability to interact and connect and have, because there was this one business guy and he was a part of the group, and he recently went to OpenAI's what was it, office because his software like it was chosen as one of their batches, and he physically met with Sam Altman and said hi, what's up, you know. So like it's crazy like why he has the time because he's super busy and he barely responds. And the reason why I came to the event and like all these other entrepreneurs I asked them and it's the same thing. They're very lonely. Like a lot of these entrepreneurs is very lonely. Like it's hard for people to understand. Like even in school, when I talk about money and stuff, people kind of tell me to shut the fuck up because they don't care, or they make fun of me like, "Oh, you're gonna become a two-figure entrepreneur when you're 4 years old." And it's like I already made more than two figures. What you talking about? So I think that personal connection and community will always last in some form, and I'm just betting my life on that. And that seems to be something I uniquely am okay at.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point, man. Like, building can get very lonely, and I think like this is not like hating or like judging other people, but by introducing yourself as this entrepreneur, like this sort of rare archetype of like people in society, right? People will maybe respect you, maybe people will judge you, but most of the time people don't want to associate with you if they're not into that kind of stuff. And it's sort of like not how to say it's just like I try not to like talk too much about start building and stuff like that. Like just wanting to make genuine friends and connection. I'll just bring it up naturally sometimes, but it's just like yeah, like building and like dealing with all this stuff that most people aren't working with is like that's what makes this entrepreneurship thing a bit alienating because one you have to spend a lot of time with yourself like just doing hard work, right? I mean, I feel like I don't even do nearly enough hard work, but we're getting there. um and the second thing is just like yeah, it's just you're sort of like classed into a different person in society that most people don't want to like be around you too much because they might feel like they're not at that level yet. And honestly, like to be really honest about like what I'm doing right now, it might be sound really cool that I'm building an AI startup, right? Like the revenue game has been so difficult for us. Getting users is there, but like actually converting and like understanding how to spend money with like the investment that we got, like that kind of stuff is hard, man. And like regardless, is like I just feel like it's just a project and might be like a bit just because like it's just I think like entrepreneurship gets a lot of glamour, but in the end it's just like a way to like deal with your career basically. Like that's what your career is. And it's just a skill that I really, really want to learn. Just because it just gives you access to like so much freedom and like it really pushes you to learn every single day. I was talking to Perry this morning, man, and like the when we were talking, we just came to the realization that, you know, when you're working in a job or like a big corporation, right? Your boss punishes you, your manager punishes you, the company punishes you. When you're an entrepreneur, the market punishes you, and it's like the most cold slap in the face you get. If you don't have users and no one pays for your shit, no one pays for your shit. No one cares. Do something so people care, right? So that's where like the learning art comes from. It's because if it doesn't work, there's no like in between like oh you did like you put in the hard work, right? Like that's the thing that is really pushing me to learn very quickly. Just because like if it doesn't work, we have to do something about it until it works. And that's why like yeah, I feel like I'm going on a big tangent here, bro. Um, but yeah, like when you mention community, like it's so important to just like surround yourself with people and open up your minds to new ideas. Like today, we just solved like two bugs with Dory just because we sat down and talked to like two full stack developers that knew their shit really well. So like, yeah, it's just like joining a community and like, firstly, importantly, is just providing value upfront. Like regardless of whether you're like just like show what you know and then like they show you. That's the thing I love about like the tech community is that you can just see like Stack Overflow, people answering questions for absolutely free, right? Like why are people doing this? It's just they have a mutual love for like this whole community and they continue wanting to build that, you know. And that's one thing that I think we just bond over trauma as like developers, and it's just so fun to just like share, give value, and you know what, like just build cool shit and you'll have fun, you know. Worst case, if things don't turn out, then you're still like you still have the skills to transition and do something else. So like yeah, that's just sort of my take on community, man.
I think the part you talked about where developing our technical skills is just so helpful because you can always get hired. But I don't know if that safety is always good for an entrepreneur. David Park, if you know him, Jenny AI.
Yeah, of course we know, man.
On Twitter, his background is just burn the boats, and burn the boats is what Arnold says, and a lot of people seem to say the burn the boats, and I don't know. Maybe I should just like not go to college and just like fucking just work on this. I don't know. I guess that's part of life. But yeah, and then the thing about community, it's like the people like one of the guys I met, he was a co-founder of this very big company. If you're in motion, if you're in design, you know him. And he came to my event, and then I saw him introducing himself not as founder of this. He just said, "I do design," you know. So everyone just treated him like normal, and I just remember just looking at people's facial expressions, and I knew that if they knew who he actually was, that their facial expression will totally change, and that they would not treat him like that. And I realized when I go to these community events, people kind of just go around this one person who they know has value, and then there's some people in the back who don't seem to be as considered. But when you talk to them, these people are actually very, very high value, and these people high value don't want to be associated with just attention unnecessary because everyone just wants to get something out. But if you're trying to want to build a genuine relationship, these people actually do care, and I find that to be like kind of like a beautiful thing about community, done right. You know, there's these people who are gems, and then there's the masses.
I think yeah, I like me saying all this stuff, like having these insights now only came through like, you know, I mean 9 weeks isn't that long, but I feel like I learned a lot about myself by doing this. You know, initially joining, there's like that high of like, oh shit, you're working at a startup, you're so cool, everyone thinks you're cool, and I was like, I was so focused on that, like how I portrayed myself, and I was like judging myself against other students in my uni, and like it was terrible, man. But like once I just like started coding a bit more, like actually being more obsessed with the product, that's when like everything else sort of like, you know, didn't really matter as much anymore. Like I'm only lucky that I get to do a startup. So like treat it like that. Don't see yourself as better than other people. But again, like, you know, if you're in the space of wanting to like learn and also like give value to other people, there's a right time for you to show like what you're capable of. And I think like it's just knowing the right time to show that. I think there's not a lot of value in saying like, oh, I build a startup to someone who's maybe not like going to be, how to say, like if I don't see value in sharing that I do a startup with another person, then I won't share. I won't waste their time, you know. But the thing is like sharing that side of you can set a different tone for that interaction. And and again, it goes back to the point where like entrepreneurship itself can be like a very alienating topic. And it's just like being like I think the people who are extremely good, like top tier, are the people who are end up being the most humble because they realize like how lucky they got to be there, but they also know that this thing can affect how other people look at them and treat them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like people just want to get something out of you, and that's it. And maybe, yeah. I mean, I usually ask, what would you tell your 17-year-old self? But you're literally 18. So
Well, what would you tell your like what 10 year olds? Man, like you said you were doing wait what stuff were you doing when you were like 13, 14? Because I was going to say something about that, but the response went a bit long. But like man, I wasn't doing shit at 13, 14. You were doing something already.
It's not no, bro. Usually I just played video games till 3 a.m. But sometimes I did some other stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Ethan and me just talking about business and startup as young entrepreneurs. Ethan's a great guy. Thanks for listening.